I moved to Elmwood Street in late September, when the trees were starting to die beautifully and the silence felt intentional. The realtor called it quaint. I called it forgotten, which suited me just fine. After the divorce, the failed teaching job, and the tabloids that painted me like a punchline, I didn't want noise. I didn't want questions. I wanted a place where people minded their own business. Elmwood delivered that in spades. Victorian homes with iron fences, neighbors who waved politely but never crossed the street, and a mailman who delivered on time and didn't ask what you used to do. It was the kind of street where secrets didn't echo, they sat. And then I saw the boy. The first time was on a Thursday morning, around 7:10. I was drinking lukewarm coffee by the bay window when I noticed him standing in the upstairs room across the street. He didn't move, just stood there, motionless, behind glass that looked smudged from the inside. He couldn't have been more than 9 or 10, pale, too thin, wearing a red sweater in warm weather. I raised my mug half out of habit. The boy didn't wave back, didn't even blink, just watched. By Saturday, it had happened 3 times, always in the morning, always the same window. He never opened it, never smiled, never left. I assumed at first that he might have a condition, some sort of disorder, or maybe just homeschooled. Then I remembered the woman. The first day I moved in, she came over with a gift basket full of soaps and ginger tea. Her name was Vivian Chambers, and she introduced herself with one of those glassy smiles that never quite reached her eyes. "My husband's a doctor," she said, "psychiatrist. Our son's delicate." I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't ask. That Sunday, I was out trimming the hedges when a white Tesla pulled into the Chambers' driveway. The boy Elliot, I would later learn, was sitting in the back seat. He looked even smaller up close, his wrists like twigs, eyes sunken into shadows. Vivian got out first. Her voice was syrupy. "Come on, sweetheart. Don't dawdle." Elliot didn't move fast enough. Her fingers closed around his arm so tight I could see her knuckles from across the lawn. And then, just like that, they were gone. Inside. The door shut. The window shade dropped. And the silence came back. That night, I barely slept. Something about the boy's face stuck in my mind like a whisper I couldn't quite hear. I tried to brush it off, told myself I was being dramatic, over-involved. I wasn't his teacher anymore. I didn't even have the right to wonder. But sometimes the gut knows what the mind refuses. And my gut said, "Watch that house." On Wednesday, it happened. I was taking out the trash when I heard a soft, rapid knocking. Not at my front door. The back. No one ever used the back. I paused. Then I opened it. He was there. Elliot. Barefoot. Dirt on his knees. A small rip in his shirt. His lips were chapped and trembling. And his eyes... God, his eyes looked like they hadn't slept in days. "Please," he whispered. "Don't send me back yet." I stepped aside without a word. He walked in like someone expecting to be punished just for breathing. I gave him water, Saturday him down. Asked nothing. He didn't say much that first hour. Just stared at the walls like they might close in on him too. But when he spoke slowly, haltingly, the words were weighted. "There's a room in our basement, no windows. The door locks on the outside. She says it's therapy. Dad agrees. But they leave me in there, sometimes all night. I don't tell people, because when I do, they say I'm confused, or that I lie." His voice didn't crack. That scared me more than if it had. I believed him. Not because I wanted to, but because I recognized it. The way a kid folds in on himself. The way he speaks with perfect adult vocabulary because he's been punished too many times for talking like a child. The way he flinched when my kettle hissed. I'd seen it before. In other kids. In students who stayed behind after class and lingered at the door. Elliot didn't need me to ask if he was okay. He needed me to not pretend that he was. "Does anyone else know?" I asked. He nodded, barely. "My teacher last year tried to ask, but they pulled me out of school." "Have you told police?" "They said she's highly respected. And Dad, he works with them. They don't listen." He looked up. "Will you listen?" I did. And I promised 2 things that night. I wouldn't tell anyone he was here, until he said it was safe. And I'd do something about it, even if the whole street hated me for it. At 2:30 a.m., after he'd fallen asleep on my couch curled up under Nico's old blanket, I stood at my window and looked across at the Chambers house. The light in the upstairs room was still on. The window was wide open now, but no one was there. Just a breeze and an empty glass. When Elliot woke up the next morning, the first thing he did was check the door. He didn't ask for breakfast. He didn't say good morning. He walked straight to the back door, turned the lock slowly, and pulled it open an inch. He stood there for a full minute, just looking, like he expected something or someone to be standing on the other side. "Still here," I said from the table, trying to sound calm. He didn't answer, just nodded slightly, and closed the door again, without a word. Kids who've been hurt don't wake up like other kids. They don't stretch or yawn or groan about cereal. They wake up on alert like they never really slept. Elliot ate quietly. Saturday, with his shoulders curved inward, spoon held in a careful grip, like dropping it might cause an alarm to go off. He noticed everything. The sound of the heater kicking in, the dog tags rattling on the counter, the tiny crack in the kitchen tile. His eyes flicked around the room like someone taught him that peace never lasted long. When he finally spoke, it wasn't a question. "You're going to get in trouble." I looked up from my coffee. "Maybe," I said. "But I'm not scared of trouble. I'm scared of silence." He blinked at that, then went back to eating. I didn't go to the police. Not yet. I'd been a teacher long enough to know that calling too early, with too little, only made things worse. Especially in a small town where Dr. Chambers was one of the most connected men in the county, and Vivian hosted fundraisers for the sheriff's re-election campaign. I needed more. So that afternoon, when Elliot fell asleep on the couch, I did something I promised myself I wouldn't. I went to Jude. Jude Mitchell and I went to college together. He played center for the Huskies back then, a brick of a man, half police dog, half deadpan sarcasm. Now he was chief of police in New Haven. We hadn't spoken in almost 5 years. He met me at a diner off Whitney Avenue, in a booth near the back where old cops sat to avoid being recognized. "You look tired," he said. "Still allergic to razors?" I didn't smile. "I need your help." That got his attention. I laid it out carefully. Everything I'd seen. What Elliot told me. His injuries. The locked room. Jude listened. No interruption. No side comments. When I finished, he leaned back in the booth and exhaled through his nose. "You know what you're asking, right?" "Yeah. I'm asking you to not pretend it didn't happen." "Ethan, that family." He stopped. Started again. "Vivian's sister is on the county board. Chambers donates to our Veterans Health Unit. They've been background checked 20 times. They're hurting a kid. That's a hell of a thing to prove without medical records or video. I don't need you to raid their house," I said. "I need time. I need access. And I need you to look the other way for 48 hours. He stared at me, then said, "That's the most illegal thing anyone's asked me this week, but not the most immoral." He didn't answer, just slid his coffee over and muttered, "You've got 24 hours. Back at the house, Elliot was awake again. He'd found my old chessboard and was quietly setting it up, one piece at a time, lining up white versus black like he'd done it 1,000 times. "You play?" I asked. "My dad taught me before she came. She doesn't like games. She doesn't like me." I sat across from him. "You're not hard to like, you know." He moved his bishop. "You don't have to say that. I'm not saying it for you. I'm saying it for me." He didn't smile, but I saw something flicker in his eyes, a spark of belief, like a match held in the dark. At 2 a.m., someone knocked on my door. Not softly, pounding. I pulled on a shirt and opened it halfway, only to find Vivian standing there. She didn't look surprised to see me. Didn't even glance down to check if Elliot was inside. She just smiled. Sharp. Measured. "Hello, Mr. Reed. I was hoping we could speak." "I don't think that's a good idea." She tilted her head. "Did my son wander into your yard by any chance? He's a little adventurous." "Your son didn't wander anywhere. He ran." Something flickered in her eyes. "Only for a second." "I understand you've been under stress," she said smoothly. "I know about your situation. The school, the press. I imagine you wouldn't want another incident." That wasn't a threat. It was a promise. I stepped out onto the porch, lowered my voice. "If you ever knock on my door at night again, I'll make sure every camera in town is pointed at your house by morning." Vivian's smile never wavered. She leaned in slightly. "You have no idea what you're involving yourself in. Then you'd better pray I don't learn." She turned and walked away. Her heels clicked down the porch steps like a metronome counting down. Inside, Elliot hadn't moved from the couch. His eyes were wide, haunted. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," I told him. "Not here." He nodded slowly. But I could tell. He didn't believe it yet. Not fully. Not until that room was opened. And we were going to open it. Jude didn't like breaking rules. He didn't like skirting procedures, didn't like back entrances, and definitely didn't like the flashlight I handed him when we parked a block away from the Chambers house at 3:12 a.m. You know this is technically breaking and entering, he muttered. I'm not breaking anything, I replied. You are. He didn't laugh. Neither did I. The back gate creaked the way all old metal gates do, like it was trying to rat us out. We moved slowly, heads low, past trimmed hedges, and the family's ornamental rose trellis. The Chambers house, even at night, looked pristine. Not a light on, curtains all drawn. Even the porch furniture was positioned perfectly. Too perfectly. We slipped around the side, where I'd seen the basement access weeks ago, a rusting storm hatch mostly hidden behind ivy. Jude crouched beside it, checking for a lock. It's not bolted, he said. Strange. Number. It's confident. We descended. The basement smelled like cedar and dust, the kind of place where expensive wine racks belong. But halfway down the stairs, the scent shifted metal, bleach, and something musty. I clicked on the flashlight. The beam caught on a thick steel door at the far end of the basement. Unlike the polished mahogany cabinets and labeled storage bins, this door was different. Functional. Unwelcoming. Industrial. I don't like this, Jude said quietly. I didn't either. But I knocked. No response. So Jude tried the handle. Locked. He reached into his coat and produced a small pouch of tools relics from his time as a patrol officer, long before the badge came with a desk and press interviews. It took 48 seconds. The lock clicked. The door creaked open. The air inside was 10 degrees colder. The room had no windows, no ventilation. It was padded. Foam lining the walls, ceiling, even the floor, a crude attempt at soundproofing. A twin mattress lay in the corner with no blanket, a bucket, a small surveillance camera in the corner, a stack of books, mostly psychology, and children's behavioral therapy. But what caught my eye wasn't the bed. It was the whiteboard, affixed to the wall, with Elliot's name written at the top. Beneath it were color-coded boxes. Defiance level, sept, compliance cycle reset. Food reduction trial, day 3. Sedation, 2 milliliters nightly. I stared at it, heart pounding. This isn't therapy, I said. It's programming. Jude was already on his radio. No signal, he growled. They've got the whole lower level shielded. We need to go deeper. On a shelf by the wall was a leather-bound notebook, plain cover, gold-trimmed edges. No name, no label. I flipped it open. Inside were meticulous handwritten notes. Chambers observation log. Subject EM. Each page detailed behaviors, consequences, and medical dosages. Days when Elliot was allowed to eat 3 meals versus 1. Times when silence was enforced. As punishment, reinforcement. There were charts, graphs, dosage schedules. Jude read over my shoulder. Jesus. This was never about treatment, I whispered. It was control, isolation, deconstruction. Ethan, Jude said suddenly, voice tight. Look at the date. I did. The last entry was yesterday. Subject unaccounted for. Behavioral volatility expected. Action plan. Reintegration within 48 hours or higher intervention. What does higher intervention mean? Jude didn't answer. He didn't have to. We heard a sound upstairs. A soft creak. Then silence. My blood froze. Jude signaled with his hand. Stay low. He moved toward the stairs, gun drawn now reluctantly, but ready. I shoved the ledger into my backpack and killed the flashlight. The next 90 seconds felt like hours. Footsteps above. Then a voice. Male. Calm. Vivian. He's not in his room. Dr. Chambers. No, he's not, she replied. And then, the basement lock was reset yesterday. If they've been inside, then we proceed. Tonight? Number not here. My breath caught. They weren't talking about looking for Elliot. They were talking about finishing something, and we were standing right beneath them. We backed out of the padded room. Jude pulled the door shut silently and latched it again. We retraced our steps through the basement, through the garden, and back to the truck, all without saying a word. Only when we were on the road again did he finally speak. I need a judge, he muttered. I need a warrant. I need backup. You think they'll listen? After that? He glanced at the notebook. They'll have to. Back at my house, Elliot was awake. He'd moved from the couch to the hallway, sitting cross-legged on the floor like he was waiting for someone to come home from war. When I walked in, he looked up. You found it, didn't you? I nodded. I knew I wasn't crazy, he whispered. You were never crazy. He crawled toward me, not walked, not ran, but crawled, like his body remembered how many times he'd been punished for taking up space. I knelt down and hugged him. He didn't flinch this time. He held on. And for the first time since I met him, I felt the tension in his back melt. He was still scared, but he finally believed. He wasn't alone anymore. I knew the war wasn't over. Even with the notebook in my hands, with Jude finally seeing the truth, with Elliot safe on my couch, I knew we'd just stepped into a larger fire. Because truth isn't always loud. But liars know how to scream. It started at 6:04 a.m., less than 4 hours after Jude and I left the Chambers house. My phone buzzed with a news alert from the New Haven Chronicle. Local teacher, under investigation for harboring minor, linked to unstable behavior. There it was. My face a photo from years ago. A blurry staff directory image. The headline didn't mention Elliot's name. Of course not. It only talked about me. Fired from Hillside Academy in 2021. Cited for emotional instability after divorce. Accused of overstepping professional boundaries. All technically true. All horribly twisted. Jude called 30 seconds later. She's going nuclear, he said. She filed a restraining order this morning. She what? Claimed you kidnapped Elliot and brainwashed him. She submitted past school board reports as supporting material. They're asking for emergency custody reversal. My blood turned cold. And Elliot? Still under your care. CPS hasn't moved. But this is political now, Ethan. She's not fighting in court, she's fighting in public. I hung up and walked to the living room. Elliot sat on the couch, watching cartoons. Too quietly. He was holding the dog's collar like a lifeline. They said your name on the news, he said without looking up. Yeah, they did. He turned. Are they going to take me back? He crouched beside him. Number, not while I can stand. He studied my face like he was learning how to measure truth again. You promise? I do. And for the first time, he nodded. Jude came by that afternoon with a flash drive in a plain white envelope. I pulled the camera feed, he said. From the basement? Yep. 2 clips. One showing the isolation room, one showing Chambers' logging entries in the journal. Will it hold in court? Don't care. We're not going to court. He handed me a second envelope. What's this? Media contacts. Independent. National. I stared at him. You want me to leak it? She's controlling the narrative, Ethan. If we stay quiet, we lose. She'll have Elliot labeled unstable before Monday. She's a mother, a public figure. Who's going to believe? She's not his mother, he snapped. And if we don't show the world who she really is, she'll wear that smile all the way to the next fundraiser while he disappears again. He wasn't wrong. I sent the clips to 3 contacts Jude listed. 2 ignored me. 1 didn't. Emily Reyes, an investigative journalist with the Hartford line, replied 10 minutes later with, I've been waiting for someone to take on the Chambers family. Let's talk. By midnight, the video was live. It was simple. A tight 3-minute segment. No dramatic music. No voiceover. Just 2 cuts of raw, unedited truth. Clip 1. The padded basement. The whiteboard. The mattress. Clip 2. Dr. Chambers calmly writing in the journal, noting Elliot's behavior with clinical coldness. Day 3. Reduced caloric intake. Silence response consistent. Defiance reduced. The headline? Elmwood family accused of psychological torture. Evidence from within. The views hit 250,000 by sunrise. By 9 a.m., Vivian's restraining order was suspended. But she didn't back down. She went on live television, looking camera-ready, tearful, and betrayed. My stepson has been manipulated by a deeply disturbed man who used his past as a teacher to gain trust. She called me unstable. She called Elliot vulnerable. She said we had fabricated the footage. People wanted to believe her. She was polished, controlled. The smile on camera was everything. But then came the tipping point. Elliot came forward. It was his decision. He asked me if he could talk. I called Emily Reyes, set up a quiet interview, just him, off camera first. He brought the books from the basement, the drawings he'd made when they wouldn't let him talk. He described every detail of the therapy room before the footage aired. Emily confirmed it all. And when she published his words, not mine, something broke. The public started to believe him. 3 days later, Dr. Chambers resigned from the State Board of Psychology. The governor's office announced an independent child protection audit. And Vivian? She vanished. Left town, under the guise of family illness. Elliot's custody hearing was moved up. CPS petitioned the court to expedite permanent placement with me. But even with the storm calming, Elliot wasn't fine. I found him curled up in the laundry room that night, hiding. When I asked why, he just whispered, I thought they'd find me. Through the television, through the walls. I sat with him on the cold tile floor for an hour. Didn't say much. Just let him feel that the room didn't lock from the outside, that the walls wouldn't close, that the man beside him didn't flinch when he cried. There's a moment, if you ever protect someone truly broken, when you realize it's not just about pulling them from danger. It's about showing them that safe isn't a trick. That kindness isn't a setup. That family can mean freedom, not control. That night, I asked Elliot what he wanted for dinner. He said, anything I don't have to earn. They held the custody hearing in a beige building that smelled like damp paper and reheated coffee. Courtroom 3B. No cameras. No reporters. Just oak benches, a tired judge, 2 CPS lawyers, a family court representative, and me wearing the only suit I owned. Elliot sat 2 rows behind, next to a court-appointed advocate named Rachel. She had a calming voice and a backpack full of fidget toys, but I could see the boy's hands clenched white on his knees. He didn't look afraid. He looked like someone bracing for betrayal. The judge was a woman in her late 50s named Honorable Valerie Greer, known for being methodical, dry, and fair. She had Elliot's file stacked nearly 2 inches high in front of her. She adjusted her glasses and spoke plainly. We are here today to determine emergency guardianship and long-term placement for Elliot Chambers, age 9, following an emergency removal due to allegations of psychological and medical abuse by his legal guardians, Dr. Lawrence and Mrs. Vivian Chambers. She glanced at me. Mr. Ethan Reed, are you currently seeking permanent guardianship? I am, Your Honor. Do you have legal representation? I'm representing myself. A raised brow. That's brave. Behind her words, I heard what she didn't say. Reckless. But I didn't come for court theatrics. I came for Elliot. Vivian arrived 15 minutes late. Dressed in deep navy, minimal makeup, hair swept back in a bun like it was another fundraiser gala. She apologized to the court, citing unexpected traffic and emotional duress. She didn't look emotionally distressed. She looked scripted. Dr. Chambers wasn't there. She claimed he was under medical review due to stress and hospitalization. Convenient. Her attorney was a sharp-jawed man named Preston Darby, with a leather briefcase and a confidence that reeked of wealth. He opened by casting doubt on the footage. The video was obtained through unlawful entry. We move that it be stricken from the record. The judge responded coolly. This is not a criminal trial, Mr. Darby. This is a custody evaluation. We will consider all evidence relevant to Elliot's welfare. That was the first point for us. I looked back at Elliot. He didn't smile, but I saw the smallest twitch in his posture, like his spine had straightened half an inch. I was asked to take the stand. I told them everything. How I found Elliot. What he told me. What I saw in that house. Then came the cross-examination. Darby asked about my past school suspension, divorce, the viral article that claimed I had meltdowns in staff meetings. I didn't flinch. Yes, I struggled after my brother died. I took time off. Got help. I lost a job because I cared too much, not too little. He pressed harder. How do we know this isn't an emotional overreaction? You've known the child for a matter of weeks. I looked at the judge. Sometimes you don't need months to know a child is in danger. You just need one look in their eyes. And when I saw Elliot, I saw a boy trying not to disappear. The courtroom fell quiet. Then the CPS advocate stood and confirmed everything. Elliot's weight at arrival dangerously low. Photos of bruises and documented stress behaviors. Testimony from a pediatric psychologist. He exhibits classic trauma, induced anxiety with signs of chronic emotional neglect. Then came the video again. Even in this small courtroom, even with just 6 people watching, the footage shook the air. The whiteboard, the dosage notes, the doctor's voice on tape, and Elliot standing behind me whispering. They used to say I was too loud, so I stopped talking. Then, the unexpected happened. Vivian requested to speak, without her lawyer. Judge Greer hesitated, then allowed it. Vivian rose slowly, walked to the center like it was a TED Talk, and placed a hand on her chest. I may not have done everything right. I may have trusted the wrong methods. But I did it out of love. My husband is a medical professional. I believed in his system. And now, I am being painted as a monster for trying to raise a child who came to me broken. She turned to Elliot. Elliot, I loved you like my own, but you never gave me a chance. I tensed. Elliot looked down. Judge Greer cleared her throat. No more direct remarks to the minor, Mrs. Chambers. Vivian stepped back, but her words lingered, like poison. Then the judge asked the hardest question of the day. Would the minor like to make a statement? Silence. I didn't look at Elliot. I didn't want him to feel pushed. But after a long pause, he stood. slowly, carefully, and walked to the front. The courtroom held its breath. His voice was soft, but steady. When I lived with her, I forgot what outside looked like. I forgot what a hug without rules felt like. He looked at the judge. When I lived there, I counted the walls. I knew every scratch on the basement floor. I talked to spiders because they were the only things that listened. He turned to me. But Ethan, he didn't ask me to be quiet. He didn't need me to be small. I don't want to go back. Then he sat down. No drama. No tears. Just the truth. The judge called a recess, then returned 30 minutes later. Her ruling was direct. Effective immediately, the court grants full temporary custody to Mr. Ethan Reed, pending final evaluation within 90 days. Elliot Chambers shall remain under his care, and Dr. and Mrs. Chambers are restricted from all unsupervised contact. She added, "Let it be clear, trauma does not dissolve in the face of wealth, charm, or social standing. It dissolves through love, safety, and truth." She banged the gavel once, and it was done. Outside the courthouse, it had started to snow, just lightly, a few flakes drifting down like ash. I knelt beside Elliot and asked if he wanted to go get pancakes. He nodded, then took my hand. For the first time, he reached for mine first. The first night after the hearing, Elliot slept for 10 hours straight. Not a single sound. No hallway pacing. No sudden starts. No whispered apologies in his sleep. Just breathing slow, even like his body finally got the message that the war was over. I stayed up the whole night. Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to hear it. Peace. We started small. Saturday mornings at the farmer's market. Quiet walks around College Woods. Building IKEA furniture together, or trying to at least. Elliot insisted on reading the instructions even when they made no sense. I let him paint his room. He chose a shade of green, called Verdant Soul. "I don't know what that means," he said, "but it sounds alive." I said it suited him. Healing isn't neat. Some nights he curled into the couch cushions when the doorbell rang. He still ate slowly, like he expected it to be taken away. Once, when I said, "You're safe," he flinched like the word meant the opposite. But he was trying. And so was I. A month passed. Then 2. Then 3. Each day we grew into something quieter, deeper. Not father and son, not yet, but something like gravity, a pull, a presence, a promise. His laugh started changing. Not the nervous chuckle he used to have, but real laughter, the kind that startled him at first, like he wasn't sure it belonged to him. Once, he dropped a glass. It shattered. He froze. Didn't move for a full minute, expecting to be punished. I got a broom, swept it up, said, "It happens." He didn't speak the rest of the night. But the next morning, there was a note under my coffee cup. "Thank you for not yelling." In May, we went back to courtroom 3B. Elliot wore the same sweater from the first hearing read, but this time it fit. He brought a drawing he'd made, our house, a tree, a dog we didn't have yet. The judge smiled when she saw it. The final order was brief. The court finds Ethan Reed to be a suitable and stable guardian. Full and permanent custody of Elliot Chambers is hereby granted. No fireworks. No music. Just a line in the record that changed everything. He was mine. And more importantly, he was his own. That summer, Elliot asked me something I hadn't expected. Can I go visit him? He meant Dr. Chambers. His father. The man who watched it all happen and did nothing. I didn't answer right away. You don't have to forgive him, I said. I know, Elliot replied. I just want to see if he looks sorry. I made the call. Arranged the visit. It was brief. Supervised. Civil. Elliot didn't cry. Didn't yell. He just sat across from the man who gave him half his DNA and said, "You could have said something," then stood and left. He didn't look back. In August, he got a bike. We spent 3 weekends learning how to ride it. I held the seat while he wobbled down Elmwood Street, his knees scraped and bandaged, but his smile wide. When he finally balanced on his own, he looked back at me like he couldn't believe it, like freedom felt strange on his skin. Then he rode. Fast. Fearless. Sometimes he asked questions at bedtime. Do you think she ever loved me? Do broken people always hurt others? Will I ever be normal? I never lied. I just said, you already are. In October, we adopted a dog. Black and white, nervous around loud noises, like someone else I knew. We named him Patch, because he came with a patch of fur over one eye, and because we were both still patching ourselves back together. Elliot built him a bed. Slept next to it the first week. One night, I walked past Elliot's room and saw the light still on. He was sitting on the floor, sketching. The walls around him now full of color rockets, books, trees, and a sky full of stars. I knocked gently. "What are you drawing?" He looked up and smiled. "A house where the light gets in." I sat with him for a while. Not as a guardian. Not as a savior. Just as someone lucky enough to witness the way a child becomes whole again. Piece by piece. Word by word. Day by day. He leaned his head on my shoulder and whispered, "Thanks for seeing me." And I whispered back, "Thank you for letting me."